Hey guys, I am actually back with one more video from the Evade Lightning build. This is a post patch after they did the nerf to it that we were all expecting and waiting to see this right here. So the spec has been nerfed in that regard, but I'm going to tell you the patch gave us a lot of stuff and I'm going to talk about it real quick. I tried messing around with my gear as much as I could to make some of this possible for this video example, but unfortunately it's not perfect. But let's talk about a few changes. I debated min-maxing this to show it, but I think I'm probably just done with the season for now. I'm just at that state that Diablo hits after about a week of playing a new season where it just gets boring. Like this isn't a game with a whole hell of a lot to do in it. So once you squeeze it, you're kind of dry. You're kind of just like, all right, on to the next thing, right? But anyhow, let's talk about some cool changes. First of all, the biggest change, the change that made me happier than anything. They fixed the monkey. He gives shields now. Yay! He is now the best in slot alt, not close for this build. So one of the things I tried doing was I tried getting his timer as close to 6 seconds as I could. The way you would accomplish this, there's two versions of this build. There's the version with the Shaco, which eventually when they keep in mind one thing right now, I don't have any Paragon right now for what I'm about to show you, so ignore some of this. I was testing a few things. But anyhow, the one thing that is, there's two versions of this build. There's the version that uses Shaco and the version that doesn't use Shaco. Until they fix the resolve stacking and until they fix Viscous Shields, this version is better. Once those things get fixed, once the game gets back to normal, there will be a version of this build someday. After all the bugs are fixed, after all the dust settles, and when that version comes, it will use Shaco. The reason why is this. Currently, Shaco is not better than these options because you lose too much to gain it. You lose the resolve stacks, you lose the dex, you lose the aspect. These things are powerful, and what it is providing you currently doesn't offset those things enough to warrant doing it. You can achieve the infinite cooldown even easier now than before, because now the animation actually taking time means that this is more of a window of opportunity for the thing to tick down naturally than before. Before you were spam casting it so quickly that you needed that perfect math to hit it. You have a little more leniency now. Now, with a really good boot temper that's masterworked plus cooldown on the head and cooldown on the neck, you're basically good to go. Now, currently, I have one temper on cooldown on the neck, only because I didn't triple this. Unfortunately, with the non-Shaco version, if you want true infinite, you're going to need to get a perfect roll on your evade. Although there is one way to fix this. So one thing that I have here is I have attacks evade, reduce evade's cooldown by 1.5 seconds. They mentioned in the patch notes that they fixed this, and turns out they did. So let me show you what happens. So right now with the 2 cooldowns, GA, and the boot temper at a 2 out of 3, when I start to spam, you'll notice this. It goes back up, but if you'll notice, watch every time it ticks back to 6. It ticks back a little bit lower each time. So you can do this for a pretty long time if you have extra charges. Like, you know, this is going to keep going for a while. It's ticking down, but very slowly. And if this was masterworked, the 3 out of 3, this window would be even smaller or almost negligible. However, if you get a boot with attacks reduce evade cooldown by 1.5 and you put that on instead, you're going to lose charges, true, but what ends up happening is you could do this at any given time. If you stop to cast your Armored Hide, if you stop to cast Gorilla, if you stop to cast any one of these things, anytime you cast anything, it's going to give you the free charges because it's doing the cast. And also, we'll talk about the new chest they added, which gives you a 4th charge in just a second. But you can make this work with these charges, even more so when you factor in the new chest that just dropped today. So we'll touch on that in a second. But I do believe that if you're not quite hitting it and you don't want to use Shaco, you use that attacks reduce with the 5 stacks, and I think you'll be good to go. 4 stacks, it's a little rough. It only really works when you're using the new chest. Again, we'll talk about that in a second. So the future version of this will run Shaco, because the future version of this isn't going to care about the maximum resolve stacks nearly as much as this. Now, what does getting Shaco give you back? What is the reason why to use Shaco? Well, for example, having a Shaco means you probably don't need to have cooldown on the neck anymore. It is also going to make hitting the breakpoint of getting this to 6 seconds that much easier because you really, really, really want to cast this every 6 seconds. I calculated this on my new planner. The way you hit 6 seconds in this is you get Protector on all 3 pieces, and on the rings, you actually masterwork for it. If you do 2 out of 3 Protector on the rings, you could hit this very, very easily. So that's kind of the plan for me if I was to min-max squeeze this. This is what I mean about it. I just don't think I'm going to do it to showcase it. But I already have it at 9.23. I only have one masterwork there on a perfect roll. I don't have any on this one. I think I actually have one on this one too. So it's getting two of them out of the possible three. You could even triple masterwork it, whatever. It doesn't matter. The point is that with the monkey uptime at full, his slams are going to keep you topped off. You don't have to worry about anything. And on top, you don't have to run Bulwark as a rune word anymore. And on top of that, you're going to be able to build your supremacy stacks up to full if you can cast him infinitely with no downtime, which is even better because of this. We'll talk about the chest last. So that's really cool. That was a buff. So right now on yielding hits, I know there's talk out there about resetting your stuff. It is true that if you come to dummies and you put on unyielding hits and you take off your spirit hall, then you take off the item that has unyielding, then you attack a dummy and then come back and put your spirit hall back on, and then you start attacking dummies, you will notice that unyielding starts to work. It's some weird thing with loading. The problem is the only time you're really going to need unyielding is in pit pushing, and currently the second you load into the pit, all that swapping around and switching to get it to work, it just goes away for me. I cannot reliably get it to stay and stick for pit pushing, so I just abandoned the idea of unyielding hits altogether. In this current loadout, I don't give a shit about the armor. I use the resistances on my rings. It's very easy to hit 1k armor. I think I have armor on my pants. Right now I have it on my boots too. I could switch it to all resist if I wanted to, but if you want to hit the 1k, that's fine. And then you're really just going to work on this, which right now looks like dodge good again. I wiped my Paragon board because I was going to restart it. I was working on something else. But yeah, here's another cool trick you can do too. So now that this is like this, let's just talk about the chest and get this out of the way right now. So, new chest. Two things we have to talk about. First thing, there's a lot of talk about Resilient being the new meta. I want to touch on this. First of all, Resilient is only better than Resolve for the classes that care about overpowering. Classes that are using Banished Lord's Talisman in their neck slot care about Resilient because overpower skills with max life, and they can't put interdiction aspect on their neck. For classes that can put interdiction on the neck, stacking Resolve is always going to be better. It is a bigger multiplier. We don't care about overpower. And let's not forget, we're also benefiting from the Colossal Rune. The Colossal Rune says you gain 2% increased damage for each stack of Resolve. So Resolve is not just competing with Resilient for damage on, again, Resolve is not competing against Resilient just for the HP versus interdiction. It is also competing against Resolve for the Colossal Rune. For this reason, Resolve is still better for classes that do not use Banished Lord's Talisman. The math is overwhelmingly in favor of Resolve stacking. So if you choose to continue playing this build, do not abandon Resolve for Resilient. That is wrong. A lot of hyperbole over Resilient being better. A lot of people didn't bother to mention that it was only better in the overpower builds using this without interdiction on the neck. Setting the record straight on that right now. Now, let's talk about the new chest. Is this good? Is this bad? It's awesome. It's actually insane. This thing is ridiculous. We only really benefit from two stats on it. The all stats and the max life. Obviously, max life is the nuts with Viscous Shield. So what do we lose by switching to it? Well, obviously on a regular chest, we get an aspect. We are going to lose stacks of Resolve, which hurts if we have Resolve stacking builds. Max life is a wash. We're getting that back. The armor we can find in other places, or we just don't care and we're fine being squishy because we're not running unyielding. And yeah, we're losing dex, but we get that back in some all stats, so that's not really much of a loss. So the big losses here are basically the aspect and the Resolve stacks. That's what we're competing to get. Can we get there? All right, well, let's consider this. The maximum life on this is about 2 times stronger than regular. If you were to triple masterwork that with a GA, 800 times 2.7 is 2,160 health. It's a considerable amount of health that's going to help with the Viscous Shield bug. So for right now, with the bugs going, yes, this is better for that purpose. Let's talk about the +1 and passive and how this is just actually ridiculous. So going down the line, let's talk about all the things we benefit from a +1 passive. First of all, we're going to get another 3% block damage reduction using a quarterstaff on this, which helps keeps us alive. We get another 3% vulnerable damage, another 5% vulnerable damage reduction. We also get another 5% crit every time we dodge, which is very interesting math. I'll talk about that in a second. Very, very good. We get another 4% damage here. We can get rid of this point completely if we want to keep. We kind of want to keep Auspicious, though. Also, this goes to 2 instead of 1.5, so that's another huge DR source. We also get more max health from Resilient here. We get another point in Potent there. We get another point in Brilliance, which is great because we're always capped. We get another Evade charge, which is great. if we're trying to go down to 5 charges to use the attack thing to make the crunch a little more, a little more lenient on needing the cooldown to survive. We also get another point here, which makes us a 20% buff. We get another point in intricacy, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. But probably most importantly is it gives us another stack of supremacy. Now, in this build, using permanent gorilla, you're going to reach your 30 stacks of supremacy, which as a baseline was a 90% bonus. But with that chest, we're now talking about a 120% damage bonus while gorilla is capped. This is why it is so insane. Now, keep in mind, Hunter basically doesn't do much for us in this build. There's really no reason to run Hunter. If you argue, oh, well, you get a damage boost when you're attacking injured enemies or whatever, great. Guess what? That's not nearly as good as having a full 30 stacks of supremacy, which is flat damage against all targets in all situations, and which now goes to 120% damage if we use the new chest. This is objectively better in every possible way, and the only way you're going to achieve maximum stacks is if you're casting something on cooldown and holding it 100% of the time. This will not achieve that. It does not last long enough on the field to reliably be up with 100% uptime. You cannot rely on the cooldown trigger to keep it up infinitely for obvious reasons. Therefore, this is not your best option. You could go with Centipede, and you could keep Centipede up because it's much, much easier to hit a 15-second timer. Therefore, you're recasting Centipede every 15 seconds if that's the choice you want to go. But now that MONKE gives us the shields, now that this can be a reliable way of keeping our shield topped off, I don't even think it's close. Never mind the fact that he slows and procs the fear thing as well. This is just awesome. So for me, it's MONKE for days. They finally gave me my wish. Getting it down to the perfect 6 seconds with the perfect math on that is ridiculous. One other thing that I want to talk about, which is really, really cool. If you're finding that survivability is an issue for you now because you're dealing with the longer evade window and not being in it 100%, I'm going to show you a trick that you could use to keep yourself alive much, much easier. So let's do this. We're going to get rid of points and potent just to do this. I'm going to put points in intricacy. We don't need this many points, but I'm going to do it anyway. Then I'm going to put on the boots to let me do this a lot. If you're struggling with surviving since the patch, one thing you can do, not even taking into consideration that currently when using the new chest, we get an 80% increased dodge chance during evade. But there is that split second in between evades where we can still die. What you're going to want to do is get in the habit of doing this. Every single time you're about to cast your ultimate, make sure you cast counterattack first. What ends up happening is this. You cast counterattack, you cast this, now you have stacks of intricacy. Now you can spam this and build it up. Now you're casting this, you have this. Counterattack is still going. Gorilla comes back up. You recast that. Hit Gorilla. The cooldown's back up. Let this fade off. Start spamming it. Boom. You can basically live in infinite counterattack abusing this trick without ever having to worry about it. You just have to make sure you don't do what I just did. Don't overcast it to the point where this doesn't allow you to recast it. Now, there's another trick you can do, too, if you wanted to get real cute. Another trick you can do, you can actually roll plus to counterattack charges on your jewelry. Let me find an example. I have some here, right here. This is something I was messing around with in a different build, but watch what happens when you do this. This is kind of cool, too. Let's say you're playing the Shaco build, okay? Let's say you got a Shaco on, so you don't need all of these rolls of ult cooldown on your jewelry. Instead, you put a +6 counterattack on your neck. Watch what happens when you cast it now. Now when I cast this, because intricacy, quote, resets your skill, it actually gives you all of your charges back, which is very, very interesting, because what this could technically mean with 8 charges of counterattack is you can cast a couple of these and cast something else like Armored Hide on your next one to get some free casts of your Armor Hide in between while you're doing it too. So now you got counterattack going a couple times, you're casting Armor Hide, you're juggling those two, and now on the next cast, when this comes back, which is going to take a second because I'm not wearing Shaco, but now you see I've been casting that freely. Now when I cast it, I'm back to 8 stacks. So this allows you to continue keeping basically infinite stacks of counterattack all the time. Also, here's another thing you want to keep in mind when using counterattack all the time. Watch what happens if I spam this multiple times. Each time you spam it, it's giving you a little bit of a diminished amount as you spam it. So you want to be really like, you know, be patient with it or whatever. I like to sometimes let it fall off and then recast it because it gives me more bang for my buck. Maybe that's wrong. I don't actually know. It feels like it's diminished. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is giving you 3 seconds. It's possible the bar is just representing the full cooldown. Therefore, each charge is a little less because it's from a different amount. I don't know, but I'm just saying, like, sometimes I let it build. Now notice it only goes to 6. It seems that when it recharges, it gives you approximately 5 charges worth, which is still a lot. And again, if you could get your monkey down to a 6-second, let's get rid of that counterattack for a second. Let's do this. Let's make sure intricacy is back to, yeah, still at 4. So now monkey's gonna be a little faster. I do like, in addition to counterattack, if you're comfortable with your survivability, armored hide, and then casting monkey, getting armor hide back up for the resilient is really nice, because you can cast this about 2 times before that fades off. You have to be quick. This is only up for 5 seconds. This resets every 6 seconds. So what you'd want to do is cast it. Let's try it one more time in 9 seconds when this is up. 4, 3, 2, 1. So here's what's going to happen. You cast it, then you get a monkey off, it resets it. You can cast it once, let it get to about half, recast it again, and then it's going to fade. And then you could recast it a 3rd time if you wanted to, and then when your monkey comes, it's going to reset it. But you have to be really careful about that. In my current build, I'm using Vortex in the build as right here. I think Vortex is really, really good. If you kept Vortex on your auto cast, you wouldn't be able to do these intricacy tricks, because the problem is every time Vortex casts, it's considered the most recent skill, and the Gorilla Intricacy will proc your Vortex. So regrettably, you'd have to get Vortex off of here. If you did that, put Vortex on your bar, ditch Ravager. Honestly, I'm kind of sick of Ravager. It's kind of overhyped. Literally, the only thing Ravager is good for in our entire build is proccing potency. That's it. It serves no other purpose than that. And in a lot of situations, you're never going to be fighting enemies that are going to get hit by your Ravager 100 times for potency to build up. It's literally only relevant when you're pit pushing. Vortex is insane for this build. It is. I've showed you why in other videos, but just to highlight it again, Vortex is the nuts. I currently, for both pit pushing and normal play, because I haven't needed the intricacy tricks yet because I've been fine in survivability, but having Vortex as an auto cast now has been great. I'm just rolling around doing my thing, and it will auto cast for me all the time. I also have it in my bar in case I want to hard cast it now and then, or you can put Ravager. You can have the best of both worlds in this build, and that's why it's so cool. If you run Vortex here, you can put Ravager here, you can keep your potent procs and still have Vortex, and it's great. The way we can get away with this is, again, we don't need Earthen Bulwark anymore because we're casting this to get our shields, and I do not use the rune that gives me crit chance anymore. So currently in this version of the build, I have 43.8% crit chance, okay? Now, it's a little lower right now because I've been moving around crits, and these aren't masterworked, and, you know, there's a bunch of other stuff. But there's 2 ways to get a lot of that crit back. First of all, when you're using the new passive, now every single time we dodge, we're getting 20% critical strike chance for 3 seconds back. So right there, there's 20 of it. The other 30 is I'm using this. Enemies you poison have reduced healing, and your Eagle skills gain 30% increased critical strike chance against them. I'm using that in combination with Menacing and this. Actually, this version currently does not have Menacing because I swapped the chest. Normally, I would get rid of the 25% dazed on helmet, and I would move Menacing off of my chest and put it on the helmet. But for now, for this example, I'll show you. So when I cast this, this creates an aura that is constantly poisoning enemies around me, which constantly allows them to get the 30% crit bonus. And with the double cooldown on my head and my neck in this build, by the time that fades, this cooldown is immediately up to recast. There's 0 downtime. This allows me to free up the glyph or the rune to use the maximum life rune to abuse Viscous Shield and also to put Vortex, but this could technically be whatever you want. You need Vortex in some way to maximize your DPS in this build, but this is still pretty strong. And the other problem I don't like about the rune word is it provides 25% as a crutch to get our crit back, but it also resets every time it fades off. It's not one of those things where as you build stacks, it perpetuates them and rolls them forward. As soon as the 2 seconds after you crit hits, it resets the 25% and has to build it back up to full again, which I really, really don't like. So when you combine the 30% from Reapers into the 20% from the new passive while wearing the new chest, you can hit your breakpoints pretty easily. One of the reasons why is because right now, on this particular ring, I rolled critical strike damage. I couldn't afford another critical strike chance ring right now. Kind of broke, and I'm out of gold, and I didn't have any options, and I wanted to try it. Critical strike damage without the crit chance is actually pretty cheap. I think I got this for like 400 or 500 mil. So I just use this for now, and that's why I'm missing some crit chance. If I had this as a crit damage chance, this would go to 50, and then the 20 provided by the passive in conjunction with the 30 of this would hit my break cap for 100. I just didn't have the ring right now with the gear that I was using, the loadout that I was using, and that's the only reason why I'm 10% short in the current version of this. But that is where that is missing, and that is what's going on. As you can see, I literally just masterworked this. This was to try to get the protector on there as an example to show you guys the lower cooldown. I didn't get the Masterworks, so I couldn't show you the perfect 6. But you can envision what this would be like every 6 seconds. Tons of shield, building Supremacy stacks. Supremacy now gets to 120 as a result of this. It is best in slot. Let me be perfectly clear. In the current version of the current meta, with all the bugs in place right now, I believe with this chest and menacing on here, with this current loadout, there is no stronger version of this build. This is it. It's not up for debate. This is the strongest possible evade version you can build. It runs the maximum amount of crit with the best types of rune words for maximum DPS. It combines everything possible using the best aspects and the best passives and everything. It's unbeatable. If you have perfect rolls and everything, this is what you would aspire to do. This version of the build would push harder on pits than any other build currently possible. That will change radically when the patch hits that eventually gets rid of Viscous Shield and Resolve stacking. This whole loadout changes. This loadout is only best in slot using the current versions of the bugs in this version of the game at the time of posting this video. That will change in the future. I actually do think there's an entirely viable version of this build in a world that doesn't use bugs. That's going to be pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to that. Once again, build planners in the description of the video. I've included updates like with this new chest and moving some stuff around so you can see the things I talked about in real time. Changes are able to be made in the rune words. That's about it. As far as stats and gearing, if you're not using Shaco, this is the version you'd want to go with. You have a very small window for cooldown. If you're struggling to keep your evade off cooldown by using the 1.5 second thing as a freebie with the 5 stacks, you could always put an additional one. The reason I have one of these Masterwork right now to 19.4 on the cooldown is because this is only 2 out of 3 evaded. With this at 3 out of 3 evade, I don't think I would need this cooldown reduction, or possibly maybe I do and I lose 4 stacks. I don't know. I don't have it yet, so I haven't been able to see it. But the math has been so close on this, as you can see. Like when you're watching, like I'm losing so little and almost keeping it up forever that little bit of the pie that I'm missing, I'm pretty sure with 1 or 2 more better rolls, I would get. And again, if anytime I'm missing that, if I was wearing these boots instead that provide the 1% attacks reduce, anytime I miss that little bit, I could just cast something and I'm back in it. So the little bit of pie that you lose each cast, see what's happening right there? And I cast it. I did it too slowly there, but you would just cast this and you're back off to the races, cast your stuff off to the races. So as long as you have that attacks 1.5 on your gear, I think you're fine. But that's entirely up to you to figure out and mess around with and try to see what you can do. So yeah, this is still pretty good. I mean, I did a 120 without too much difficulty with this loadout. Vortex is MVP, so if you're struggling and trying to get packs down early, I really, really have to strongly suggest trying Vortex. You're going to notice you're clearing packs much, much easier. If they ever fix unyielding to be up 100% of the time, this build becomes much stronger. It does suck that we can't have that, all the time because of whatever bug is taking it away from us. The new chest is best in slot and very, very good, so that's a thumbs up on that if you were curious how good it is in Eagle Evade. And MONKE is now easily our best ult and provides all the functionality we could want in proccing. This aspect here, once an enemy is slowed by 80%, they're feared. It provides that all on its own, never mind with menacing, which also provides it, but the MONKE doing it is awesome. Vortexing them into the MONKE is awesome. Yeah, so there you go. It was a good run, guys. Like I said, I think I'm done. All I would be able to do in this season is try to min-max squeeze this to maybe try pushing pit, but people are already clearing 150 with the broken overpower build. I just don't care. I mean, there's no real reason to waste time. Time is a resource that I could, spend doing other things in real life and touching grass. And when we're young festival is in town this weekend. There's just a lot to do and more things to focus on. But I think we've kind of seen this one through. This is about as good as it's going to get. In the current version of the game, I don't think you're going to see a stronger version of this particular Eagle Evade build than what's currently here. So build planners in there. Look for the No Uniques build, which technically that's kind of a meme. I'll have to change the name. I'll just name it to Shroud build or whatever, because now we do have a unique, but I'll just call it No Shaco build, I guess. That probably makes more sense. So that's what I'll rename it, as No Shaco. But there you have it. Good luck, guys. Have fun. See you next season.